If your mood depends on who stays, who responds, or who gives attention, then your happiness is not truly yours. It belongs to the people you are emotionally attached to. This is not an insult, it is an observation. Most people do not suffer because they are alone. They suffer because they never developed the ability to feel stable within themselves. They chase reassurance and call it love. They fear silence and call it loneliness. They panic when someone pulls away because their emotional security was never self-built. The uncomfortable truth is that as long as your inner world relies on external validation, you will continue to feel drained, anxious, and uncertain. The moment you shift that responsibility back to yourself, everything changes. In this video, you will learn how to stop outsourcing your emotional stability and start cultivating a daily sense of well-being that does not fluctuate based on anyone's presence or absence. Chapter 1. The Silent Dependence on Validation. From childhood, most of us were quietly taught that our value depends on how others see us. When we got good grades, we were praised. When we behaved well, we were loved. When we agreed with others and avoided conflict, we were accepted. Without realizing it, we learned a powerful lesson. Approval means we are good, and disapproval means something is wrong with us. Over time, this lesson became deeply rooted in our nervous system. We began to connect attention with safety and praise with worth. As adults, this pattern continues in subtle ways. When someone takes too long to reply, your mind starts creating stories. You wonder if you said something wrong. When someone does not compliment your effort, you question whether you are good enough. If someone's tone changes slightly, you replay the conversation in your head, searching for mistakes. These reactions may seem small, but they reveal something deeper. Your emotional stability is connected to other people's responses. This dependence is powerful because it operates quietly. You may believe you are confident and independent, yet your mood still rises and falls based on how others treat you. The Buddha taught that craving is the root of suffering, and craving approval is one of the most hidden forms of attachment. When you depend on validation to feel secure, your inner world becomes fragile. You are constantly waiting for reassurance to feel okay. But real happiness cannot grow in a mind that measures its worth through the reactions of others. The first step toward feeling better every day is simple awareness. Start noticing how often your mood shifts because of someone else's behavior. Do not criticize yourself for it, just observe it honestly. When you become aware of your need for validation, you begin to separate from it. Awareness does not instantly remove attachment, but it reduces its power. Gradually, you will experience moments where someone's inconsistency no longer shakes you. That calmness, even in small moments, is the beginning of emotional freedom. Chapter 2. Becoming comfortable in your own presence. Many people believe they are afraid of being alone, but what they are truly afraid of is being alone with their own thoughts. The moment there is no noise, no conversation, and no distraction, the mind becomes louder. Old memories appear. Unfinished emotions rise to the surface. Doubts and insecurities that were hidden under constant activity begin to show themselves. This discomfort can feel overwhelming, which is why so many people immediately reach for their phones, turn on music, or search for someone to talk to. It is not always because they need connection. It is often because they are trying to escape themselves. From a young age, most of us were not taught how to sit quietly with our emotions. We were taught how to achieve, how to impress, how to stay busy, but not how to understand our inner world. So when silence arrives, it feels unfamiliar, it feels heavy. But silence is not the enemy, it is simply a mirror. It shows you what has been ignored. The Buddha encouraged deep self-observation because he understood that peace does not come from avoiding the mind, but from understanding it. When you allow yourself to sit alone without distraction, You begin to see your thought patterns more clearly. You notice how often you criticize yourself. You notice how quickly you worry about others' opinions. You begin to understand the emotional habits that shape your daily experience. At first, this awareness can feel uncomfortable, but discomfort is part of growth. When you stay present instead of escaping, your mind slowly becomes less chaotic. Thoughts lose their intensity because you are no longer fighting them. You begin to realize that being alone does not mean being incomplete. It means you are building a stronger relationship with yourself. The more comfortable you become in your own presence, the less desperate you feel for constant external stimulation. Solitude stops feeling like rejection and starts feeling like grounding. And when your own company feels safe, you no longer depend on others to escape your inner world. That safety within yourself is a powerful step toward feeling better every day. Chapter 3. Separating your identity from others' behavior. One of the most damaging beliefs we carry, often without realizing it, is the belief that how other people treat us defines who we are. When someone speaks kindly, we feel valuable. When someone ignores us, we feel invisible. When someone chooses us, we feel worthy. When someone leaves, we feel rejected not just in relationship, but in identity. Slowly, our sense of self becomes tied to other people's behavior. Our emotional stability becomes dependent on how consistently others approve, respond, and stay. This belief is rarely questioned because it feels normal. If someone distances themselves, your mind immediately searches for what you did wrong. If someone criticizes you, you begin to doubt your abilities. If someone loses interest, you assume you were not enough. But this automatic conclusion is deeply flawed. Other people's actions reflect their emotional capacity, their fears, their priorities, and their awareness. It does not reflect your inherent value. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that changes its shape every few seconds. Sometimes it makes you look taller, sometimes shorter, sometimes distorted. Would you trust that mirror to tell you who you truly are? Of course not. Yet many people use unstable human reactions as mirrors to measure their identity. When someone is warm, they feel secure. When someone is cold, they feel diminished. This constant emotional fluctuation creates inner instability. The Buddha taught non-attachment not because relationships are meaningless, but because attachment to identity through others creates suffering. When you attach your worth to someone's attention, you give them silent authority over your emotions. They do not even need to intend to control you. Your own attachment does it automatically. A small change in their tone can disturb your entire day. A lack of appreciation can make you question your entire effort. This is not because you are weak. It is because your identity has been placed in unstable hands. True emotional strength begins when you separate your identity from external reactions. This does not mean ignoring feedback or refusing growth. It means understanding that your core value is not decided by someone's mood, preference, or level of understanding. Someone may fail to see your depth. Someone may misunderstand your intentions. Someone may not recognize your effort. That does not reduce your worth. It only reveals their perception. When you begin practicing this separation, something powerful happens internally. You stop taking everything personally. You begin observing behavior without immediately translating it into a judgment about yourself. If someone is distant, instead of thinking, "I am not enough," you begin asking, "What might they be dealing with?" If someone criticizes you, instead of collapsing, you calmly evaluate whether the criticism is useful or simply projection. This shift creates emotional space between you and the situation. Over time, this space becomes stability. Your mood becomes less reactive. You stop overanalyzing every message. You stop replaying conversations repeatedly in your mind. You stop adjusting your personality to secure approval. You become more consistent because your sense of self is no longer constantly being reshaped by others. When your identity is rooted internally rather than externally, relationships become lighter. You connect because you want to, not because you need reassurance. You care deeply, but you do not cling. You appreciate others, but you do not collapse without them. You no longer chase attention to feel visible because you already recognize your own presence. This is the beginning of real confidence. Not loud confidence, not performance-based confidence, but grounded confidence. The kind that remains steady even when someone misunderstands you. The kind that does not crumble when someone walks away. The kind that allows you to say, "I know who I am," without needing everyone else to agree. When you separate your identity from others' behavior, you reclaim emotional ownership. Your happiness stops being controlled by external fluctuations. You begin feeling better not because everyone treats you perfectly, but because you are no longer allowing their inconsistency to define you. That inner separation is not coldness, it is clarity. And clarity is the foundation of emotional freedom. Chapter 4. Developing Emotional Self-Regulation. Most people believe their emotions are caused by other people, but in reality, emotions are internal reactions shaped by interpretation. Someone says something, and you feel hurt. Someone cancels plans, and you feel rejected. Someone forgets to appreciate you, and you feel unvalued. It appears as if their behavior directly created your emotional state. But what truly happens is more subtle. Their behavior triggers a thought, and that thought creates an emotion. If the thought changes, the emotion changes. This means your emotional world is not controlled by others. It is shaped by how your mind interprets events. Emotional self-regulation is the ability to manage this internal process instead of being controlled by it. It is the ability to pause before reacting, to observe before concluding, and to soothe yourself instead of immediately seeking someone else to fix how you feel. Without this skill, your emotions will always depend on external behavior. You will feel good when others behave well and feel unstable when they do not. That pattern creates emotional dependency. Many people unconsciously outsource emotional regulation. When they feel anxious, they immediately seek reassurance. When they feel sad, they search for distraction. When they feel lonely, they reach for attention. While connection can be supportive, relying on it as your only coping mechanism prevents inner strength from developing. If every uncomfortable feeling must be solved by someone else's presence, you never learn to trust yourself to handle your own emotional storms. The Buddha emphasized awareness of the mind because awareness interrupts automatic reaction. When an emotion rises, instead of immediately acting on it, observe it. Notice where it shows up in your body. Is your chest tight? Is your stomach tense? Is your breathing shallow? Simply observing the physical sensation begins to calm the nervous system. This is not suppression, it is conscious regulation. Breathing is one of the most powerful tools for emotional stability. When you slow your breath intentionally, you send a signal to your nervous system that you are safe. Safety reduces anxiety. Clarity reduces overthinking. Instead of texting someone repeatedly to relieve your insecurity, pause and regulate your body first. Often, what feels like urgent emotional need becomes manageable when your nervous system settles. Another key part of emotional self-regulation is questioning your automatic thoughts. If someone does not respond quickly, your mind may say, "They are losing interest." But that thought is not fact, it is interpretation. Ask yourself whether there are other possible explanations. Maybe they are busy, maybe they are overwhelmed, maybe it has nothing to do with you. This small mental shift reduces unnecessary emotional suffering. Emotional maturity grows when you stop demanding that others behave perfectly to protect your mood. People will be inconsistent, they will misunderstand you, They will disappoint you sometimes. If your peace depends on flawless behavior from others, you will constantly feel unstable. But when you learn to regulate your reactions, their imperfections no longer control your emotional state. Self-regulation also includes learning to sit with uncomfortable feelings instead of escaping them. If you feel lonely, instead of immediately reaching out, ask yourself what the loneliness is teaching you. Sometimes it is pointing to a lack of purpose. Sometimes it is highlighting exhaustion. Sometimes it is revealing unresolved fear. When you listen instead of escaping, you begin understanding your emotional patterns. The more you regulate yourself, the more confident you become in your ability to handle life. You stop fearing difficult emotions because you trust your capacity to move through them. This trust creates inner stability. Stability reduces desperation, and when desperation fades, your relationships become healthier because you are no longer using them as emotional crutches. Over time, emotional self-regulation transforms how you experience daily life. Small inconveniences no longer ruin your entire day. A delayed reply does not spiral into insecurity. A minor disagreement does not feel like rejection. You respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. This shift may seem subtle, but it completely changes your internal experience. Feeling better every day without needing anyone is not about pushing people away. It is about building such strong emotional muscles that your peace does not collapse when someone behaves unpredictably. It is about becoming your own source of calm. It is about knowing that even when emotions rise, you have the tools to steady yourself. When you master emotional self-regulation, you no longer depend on constant reassurance to feel secure. You become steady within yourself. And that steadiness is one of the greatest forms of freedom you can experience. Chapter 5. Transforming solitude into strength. Most people experience solitude as something that happens to them rather than something they choose. When friends become busy, when relationships end, or when social invitations slow down, solitude can feel like rejection. It can feel like proof that you are unwanted or forgotten. But solitude itself is neutral. The meaning you give it determines whether it becomes suffering or strength. If you believe being alone means you are not valued, solitude will feel heavy. If you believe being alone is an opportunity to grow, solitude becomes powerful. The difference is not in the circumstance. It is in perception. From childhood, many of us were conditioned to believe that constant connection equals success. Popular people were admired, social lives were celebrated. Independence was often misunderstood as loneliness. Because of this conditioning, being alone can trigger insecurity. You may start questioning your worth simply because you are not surrounded by others. But being alone does not mean being unwanted. It often means you are in a season of refinement. When you are constantly around people, your identity can become influenced by their opinions, moods, and expectations. You adjust your behavior to fit the environment. You soften your voice in certain spaces. You hide parts of yourself to maintain harmony. Over time, you may forget what your authentic preferences actually are. Solitude gives you space to rediscover that. In solitude, you begin hearing your own thoughts clearly. You notice what excites you without outside influence. You recognize which goals truly matter to you and which ones were adopted to impress others. You understand your emotional triggers without distraction. This clarity is impossible when you are constantly surrounded by noise. The Buddha chose solitude not as escape, but as preparation. In stillness, he faced his fears, his doubts, and his attachments directly. Solitude stripped away illusion. It exposed truth. That exposure can feel uncomfortable at first because it removes distraction, but within that discomfort lies growth. When you intentionally use solitude for self-development, everything changes. Instead of scrolling endlessly, you begin reading. Instead of chasing attention, you invest in skill. Instead of waiting for someone to motivate you, you build discipline. Solitude becomes the training ground where you strengthen your mind, body, and character. Physical strength grows through resistance. Emotional strength grows through self-reflection. Mental clarity grows through quiet focus. All of these require time alone. Without solitude, you rarely confront your weaknesses honestly. You rarely evaluate your habits deeply. You rarely build self-trust intentionally. Solitude also teaches emotional independence. When you learn to enjoy your own company, you stop fearing abandonment. If someone leaves, you do not collapse because you already know how to stand alone. If plans fall through, you do not feel lost because you are comfortable creating your own experiences. This independence is not arrogance, it is security. There is also a profound creative power in solitude. Many of your best ideas appear when you are not distracted. Many of your deepest realizations come when you are alone with your thoughts. Creativity requires space. Wisdom requires silence. Growth requires reflection. When solitude becomes intentional, it stops feeling like punishment. It becomes restoration. It becomes a time where you recharge emotionally instead of draining yourself socially. You begin choosing connection rather than chasing it. You appreciate people without depending on them. Over time, your internal world becomes richer. You build routines that strengthen you. You develop hobbies that fulfill you. You cultivate habits that stabilize you. Your sense of identity becomes clearer because it is no longer shaped entirely by others. And when your internal world is rich, you do not feel desperate for external stimulation. This is when solitude transforms into strength. You wake up without immediately reaching for your phone. You enjoy moments of silence without anxiety. You spend time alone without interpreting it as rejection. You become your own foundation. When you stop seeing solitude as absence and start seeing it as preparation, your entire perspective shifts. Instead of asking, "Why am I alone?" you begin asking, "How can I grow in this space?" That question changes everything. Feeling better every day without needing anyone is deeply connected to how you experience solitude. If solitude feels threatening, you will constantly seek escape. If solitude feels empowering, you will feel grounded even when no one is around. True strength is not built in constant comfort. It is built in quiet moments where you choose growth over distraction. Solitude is not your enemy. It is the space where you become emotionally self-sufficient. And when you become strong in solitude, you no longer fear being alone. You master it. Chapter 6. Creating daily habits that strengthen your inner peace. Many people wait for happiness to arrive through a relationship, a message, a compliment, or a special moment. But happiness rarely appears as a sudden event. It is built quietly through daily habits. The way you start your morning, the way you respond to stress, the way you speak to yourself in difficult moments, and the way you spend your time when no one is watching all shape your emotional stability. If your habits are reactive, your emotions will be reactive. If your habits are intentional, your peace will become intentional. The first moments of your day are especially powerful. If you wake up and immediately check your phone, your mood becomes dependent on what you see. A lack of messages can create subtle disappointment. A stressful notification can trigger anxiety before your mind is even fully awake. Without realizing it, you allow external information to set your emotional tone. Over time, this trains your nervous system to look outward for stability instead of inward. Imagine instead waking up and taking a few quiet minutes before engaging with the world. You breathe deeply, you stretch your body, you reflect on what you are grateful for. You decide how you want to show up that day. These small actions may seem simple, but they create a powerful shift. Instead of reacting to life, you begin directing your inner state. That direction builds confidence and calmness. Gratitude is one of the most underestimated daily practices. Many people treat it as a positive thinking exercise, but it is much deeper than that. When you consistently focus on what is already working in your life, your brain begins to notice stability instead of lack. If you constantly search for what is missing, you will feel incomplete even when life is good. But if you intentionally notice what is present, your sense of sufficiency increases. Gratitude rewires your perception, and perception shapes emotion. Physical movement also plays a major role in emotional well-being. When you exercise, walk, or even stretch consistently, you release tension stored in the body. Stress is not only mental, it is physical. When stress accumulates in your muscles and breathing becomes shallow, your mind becomes more anxious and reactive. Movement resets your system. It creates clarity. It reduces emotional intensity. Over time, this builds resilience. Another important habit is guarding your attention. In today's world, your attention is constantly pulled in different directions. Social media, news, messages, and endless content compete for your focus. If you allow your attention to be scattered all day, your mind becomes restless and overstimulated. Restlessness weakens inner peace. By limiting unnecessary comparison and reducing exposure to negativity, you protect your emotional energy. The way you speak to yourself throughout the day also shapes your emotional experience. Many people are kind to others but harsh toward themselves. When they make a mistake, they criticize themselves severely. When they feel insecure, they shame themselves silently. This internal dialogue slowly erodes self-worth. If you want to feel better every day without needing anyone, you must become aware of your self-talk. Replace harsh judgment with constructive guidance. Speak to yourself with the same patience you would offer a close friend. Over time, this builds self-trust and inner security. Consistency is more important than intensity. You do not need extreme routines or dramatic changes. Small daily actions practiced repeatedly create powerful results. When you breathe intentionally each day, reflect briefly each day, move your body each day, and guard your attention each day, your emotional baseline rises. You begin feeling stable not because something extraordinary happened, but because your habits support your nervous system. The Buddha emphasized discipline not as punishment, but as liberation. When your habits are chaotic, your emotions are chaotic. When your habits are steady, your mind becomes steady. Structure creates safety. Safety reduces anxiety. Reduced anxiety increases clarity. Over time, you will notice something subtle but powerful. You will not wake up searching for someone to make you feel good. You will not depend on constant interaction to feel alive. Your day will feel grounded because you have built internal systems that support you. You become your own source of direction. Feeling better every day without needing anyone is not about cutting people off or rejecting connection. It is about strengthening your internal foundation so that connection becomes a choice rather than a necessity. Daily habits are the bricks that build that foundation. When your foundation is strong, your peace does not collapse easily. And when your peace is supported by your own discipline, your happiness becomes steady, reliable, and independent of external approval. Chapter 7. Becoming whole before anyone arrives. There is a belief so deeply rooted in modern society that most people never question it. It is the belief that you are incomplete on your own and that somewhere out there exists a person who will complete you. From movies to music, from social media to everyday conversations, the message is repeated constantly. Find the one, and you will finally feel whole. Find someone who understands you, chooses you, validates you, and stays with you, and then your happiness will be secure. This idea sounds romantic, but it quietly creates emotional dependency. When you believe someone else completes you, you begin living with hidden fear. You fear losing them. You fear disappointing them. You fear being replaced. You fear not being enough to keep them. That fear slowly shapes your behavior. You may overgive to maintain connection. You may silence your needs to avoid conflict. You may tolerate disrespect because being alone feels more frightening than being mistreated. In trying to preserve the relationship, you begin losing yourself. The truth is that you were whole before anyone entered your life. Your personality, your mind, your abilities, your dreams, and your worth existed independently. A relationship can add companionship, joy, and shared experiences, but it does not create your identity. When you forget this, you unconsciously place the responsibility for your happiness in someone else's hands. The Buddha's teachings pointed toward inner completeness. He did not teach emotional isolation, but he taught that attachment creates suffering when you believe your peace depends on something outside you. When you attach your sense of wholeness to another person, you make your happiness fragile. If they are happy, you feel secure. If they are distant, you feel anxious. If they leave, you feel broken. But you are not broken. You are reacting to the illusion that you were incomplete. Becoming whole before anyone arrives means reclaiming responsibility for your emotional state. It means understanding that your stability, your self-respect, and your sense of identity are internal foundations, not external gifts. When you become whole within yourself, relationships shift from necessity to choice. You no longer look for someone to fix your loneliness. You look for someone to share your already full life. Wholeness begins with self-acceptance. Many people search for someone who will accept them completely while secretly rejecting parts of themselves. They hide their flaws, suppress their insecurities, and hope someone else will validate what they cannot validate internally. But when you begin accepting your imperfections without harsh judgment, you stop craving constant reassurance. You understand that being human includes mistakes, growth, and vulnerability. This acceptance creates emotional steadiness. Another part of becoming whole is developing purpose outside of relationships. When your entire sense of meaning revolves around one person, your world becomes small. If they are unavailable, you feel empty. If they are busy, you feel neglected. But when you cultivate goals, passions, and personal growth, your identity expands. You become multidimensional. Your happiness no longer depends on a single source. Being whole also means being comfortable with your own company. If you constantly need someone around to feel secure, it reveals that you have not yet built safety within yourself. When you learn to enjoy your own presence, you remove the fear of abandonment. If someone leaves, you do not collapse because you know how to stand alone. If plans change, you adapt calmly. Your emotional balance remains intact. This inner wholeness transforms how you love. You no longer cling out of fear. You no longer chase out of insecurity. You no longer overextend yourself to avoid rejection. Instead, you connect from strength. You give because you want to, not because you are afraid of losing someone. You communicate honestly because you value authenticity more than approval. You walk away when necessary because your self-respect is stronger than your fear of being alone. When you are whole, love becomes healthier. You appreciate the other person without making them your emotional foundation. You support them without sacrificing yourself. You allow them freedom without feeling threatened, and if the relationship ends, you grieve naturally, but you do not lose your identity. You remain you. Many people confuse attachment with love. Attachment says, "I need you to feel okay." Love says, "I choose you, but I can stand on my own." Attachment is rooted in fear. Love rooted in wholeness is rooted in security. When you become whole before anyone arrives, you shift from attachment to conscious connection. There is also a deep peace that comes from knowing you are enough without performance. When you do not depend on someone else's approval to validate your existence, you move through life differently. You speak more honestly, you set boundaries more confidently, you make decisions based on alignment rather than fear. This confidence is quiet but powerful. The journey to wholeness is not instant. It requires reflection. It requires honesty about where you are still dependent. It requires courage to sit with loneliness instead of immediately escaping it. But each time you choose self-awareness over desperation, you strengthen your inner foundation. Over time, you will notice that your emotional reactions become softer. A delayed message no longer shakes your confidence. A disagreement no longer feels like abandonment. You trust yourself. You trust your worth. You trust your ability to handle change. That trust is the essence of wholeness. When you are whole, you stop asking, "Who will choose me?" and start asking, "Does this align with who I am?" You stop trying to prove your value and start living from it. You stop fearing solitude because you understand that your presence is enough. Becoming whole before anyone arrives does not mean rejecting relationships. It means entering them from stability instead of need. It means loving without losing yourself. It means caring without collapsing. It means choosing connection while remaining emotionally self-sufficient. When you reach this state, something profound shifts inside you. You wake up without feeling incomplete. You move through your day without constantly seeking reassurance. You feel grounded even when alone. And when someone enters your life, they enhance your happiness rather than define it. This is what it means to feel better every day without needing anyone. It means your happiness is internally generated. It means your peace is self-supported. It means your identity is self-defined. You were never half of a person waiting to be completed. You were always whole, but you had to rediscover it beneath the layers of conditioning and fear. And once you truly understand your wholeness, you stop chasing love. You embody it. Chapter 8. Living from inner sufficiency instead of emotional need. There is a silent shift that changes everything in a person's life. It is not dramatic, it is not loud, it is not something the world immediately notices. It happens internally. It happens the moment you stop asking life to constantly give you what you have not yet learned to give yourself. This shift is the movement from emotional need to inner sufficiency. Most people live from emotional need without realizing it. They need reassurance to feel secure. They need attention to feel visible. They need praise to feel competent. They need constant connection to feel alive. On the surface, this seems normal because humans are social beings. But there is a difference between enjoying connection and depending on it for your emotional survival. When you live from emotional need, your nervous system is always slightly tense. You are scanning for signs of withdrawal. You are sensitive to tone changes. You overanalyze silence. You measure your worth through response times and reactions. Even when things are going well, there is a quiet fear underneath. A fear that something might shift. A fear that you might not be enough to keep what you have. This constant tension drains energy. It creates overthinking. It makes you act in ways that are not fully authentic. You might agree when you want to disagree. You might give more than you can afford emotionally. You might ignore your intuition to avoid conflict. Emotional need does not just affect your mood, it shapes your behavior. Inner sufficiency is different. Inner sufficiency means you know deeply and calmly that your emotional stability does not depend on someone else's consistency. It means you enjoy connection, but you are not destabilized without it. It means you appreciate love, but you do not crumble if it changes. It means your peace is internally maintained. This does not happen by pretending you do not care. It happens by strengthening your relationship with yourself so much that your sense of safety is internal. When you trust yourself to handle discomfort, you stop panicking when things are uncertain. When you know your worth independently, you stop chasing proof of it. The Buddha taught that craving leads to suffering because craving creates attachment to outcomes. When you crave someone's constant validation, you become attached to how they respond. When they respond warmly, you feel relief. When they respond coldly, you feel distress. Your emotional state becomes a reaction to something outside your control. Living from inner sufficiency means releasing the craving for emotional guarantees. It means accepting that people will be imperfect, that circumstances will change, and that control is limited. But instead of fearing this uncertainty, you build the internal strength to navigate it calmly. One of the key components of inner sufficiency is self-trust. Self-trust develops when you keep promises to yourself. When you say you will take care of your body and you follow through, trust grows. When you say you will protect your boundaries and you honor them, trust grows. When you say you will not tolerate disrespect and you act accordingly, trust grows. Each small act of integrity strengthens your internal foundation. As self-trust grows, emotional desperation weakens. You no longer beg for attention because you respect your own time. You no longer tolerate inconsistency because you value stability. You no longer overextend yourself to maintain connection because you trust that you will be okay even if someone leaves. Inner sufficiency also changes how you experience loneliness. Loneliness often feels painful because it is interpreted as evidence of rejection. But when you live from sufficiency, loneliness becomes simply the absence of company, not the absence of worth. You can sit alone without feeling diminished. You can spend time by yourself without interpreting it as failure. There is a deep calmness in this state. You wake up without urgently checking who has reached out. You move through conversations without seeking constant affirmation. You enjoy connection, but you do not cling to it. You allow people to come and go without attaching your identity to their presence. Another important part of inner sufficiency is emotional responsibility. Emotional responsibility means recognizing that while others can influence your feelings, they are not responsible for regulating them. If someone disappoints you, you allow yourself to feel it, but you do not collapse. If someone misunderstands you, you clarify calmly, but you do not lose your sense of self. You handle your emotions internally first, before projecting them outward. This level of responsibility creates maturity, it creates stability, it creates dignity. You stop blaming others for how you feel and start managing your internal responses consciously. That management does not mean suppression, it means awareness and regulation. When you live from inner sufficiency, relationships improve naturally. You communicate more clearly because you are not speaking from fear. You set boundaries without aggression because you are not defending insecurity. You walk away when necessary without dramatic collapse because you trust your ability to rebuild. There is also a freedom that emerges when you no longer depend on emotional guarantees. You become less anxious about the future. You stop trying to control every detail. You allow life to unfold while maintaining your internal balance. This freedom feels light, it feels grounded, it feels steady. Living from emotional need feels like constantly asking, will they stay? Living from inner sufficiency feels like calmly saying, I will be okay either way. That difference is life-changing. It is important to understand that inner sufficiency does not eliminate desire for connection. It simply removes the desperation attached to it. You can still want companionship. You can still desire intimacy. But your desire is not driven by fear. It is driven by choice. When you reach this state, your energy changes. You appear calmer. You speak slower. You react less. You observe more. People feel your stability. They sense that you are not trying to extract validation from them. This makes interactions healthier because they are not loaded with hidden pressure. The journey to inner sufficiency is gradual. It requires continuous self-awareness. It requires noticing when you are slipping back into emotional dependence. It requires gently redirecting yourself toward internal grounding, but each time you choose sufficiency over need, you strengthen your peace. Eventually, something profound happens. You stop chasing happiness externally because you realize it was never missing. You stop fearing solitude because you have learned to be your own anchor. You stop measuring your worth through others' reactions because you have defined it internally. This is what it means to truly feel better every day without needing anyone. It does not mean isolation. It does not mean emotional coldness. It means your happiness is not fragile. It means your peace is self-supported. It means your stability is internally cultivated. When you live from inner sufficiency, you do not cling to life. You participate in it fully while standing firmly within yourself. You love without losing yourself. You care without collapsing. You connect without needing to be completed. And in that state, you realize something quietly powerful. You were never meant to depend on others for your emotional survival. You were meant to grow strong enough to carry your own peace. That strength is freedom. Chapter 9. Mastering your mind so no one controls your peace. There is a level of emotional freedom that very few people ever reach, not because it is impossible, but because it requires discipline, awareness, and radical honesty. It is the state where your peace is no longer controlled by other people's behavior. It is the state where someone's opinion does not dictate your self-worth, where someone's absence does not disturb your stability, and where someone's inconsistency does not shake your identity. This state is not emotional numbness, it is mental mastery. Most emotional suffering does not come directly from what happens. It comes from how the mind interprets what happens. Two people can experience the same event and feel completely different emotions. One person sees rejection and feels broken. Another sees redirection and feels clarity. The difference is not in the event. The difference is in the mental framework through which the event is processed. Your mind is the lens through which you experience reality. If the lens is distorted by insecurity, fear, and attachment, everything will appear threatening. If the lens is clear, stable, and self-aware, even challenges will feel manageable. Mastering your mind means taking responsibility for the lens rather than trying to control the world. Most people attempt to control their external environment to maintain emotional comfort. They try to secure loyalty, guarantee attention, avoid criticism, and eliminate uncertainty. But life does not cooperate with these attempts. People change, circumstances shift. Expectations are not always met. When your peace depends on everything aligning perfectly, you will constantly feel unstable. The Buddha taught that the mind is both the source of suffering and the path to liberation. If your thoughts are undisciplined, your emotions will be chaotic. If your thoughts are observed and guided consciously, your emotions will become steady. This does not mean you suppress feelings. It means you understand them. When someone criticizes you, what is the first thought that arises? Is it, I am not good enough? Is it, they are rejecting me? That thought creates emotion. But if you consciously shift the thought to, this is one perspective, or I can learn without collapsing, the emotional intensity changes. The event did not change. The interpretation did. Mastering your mind begins with observing your automatic thought patterns. Notice how quickly your mind jumps to worst-case scenarios. Notice how often you personalize neutral situations. Notice how frequently you assume negative intent without evidence. These patterns operate subconsciously, but awareness brings them into the light. Once you see your patterns, you can begin questioning them. Is this thought absolutely true? Is there another explanation? Am I reacting to the present moment, or am I reacting to old wounds being triggered? These questions create mental space. That space prevents emotional impulsiveness. Emotional impulsiveness is what gives others control over your peace. If someone's tone changes and you immediately spiral, they unintentionally control your mood. If someone withdraws and you instantly panic, your stability was externally anchored. But when you pause, breathe, and reflect before reacting, you reclaim authority over your inner state. Mental mastery also involves understanding impermanence. Everything changes, people's moods shift, relationships evolve, life circumstances transform. When you resist this reality, you suffer. When you accept it, you adapt. Accepting impermanence does not mean indifference. It means flexibility. If someone becomes distant, instead of clinging or collapsing, you observe. You communicate calmly. You adjust if necessary, but you do not lose yourself. You recognize that stability must come from within, not from constant external reassurance. There is also immense power in detaching from unnecessary mental narratives. The mind loves storytelling. A delayed message becomes a story of abandonment. A short reply becomes a story of rejection. A cancelled plan becomes a story of being unimportant. These stories are often assumptions, not facts. When you master your mind, you stop believing every story it creates. You treat thoughts as mental events, not absolute truths. This shift reduces emotional turbulence dramatically. You no longer chase imaginary problems. You respond to reality, not projections. Mastery also includes emotional endurance. Feeling uncomfortable does not mean something is wrong. Anxiety, sadness, and uncertainty are part of life. If you can sit with these feelings without panicking or seeking immediate relief, you build resilience. Resilience makes you less dependent on others for emotional soothing. As you strengthen your mind, something changes in how you move through the world. You become less reactive. You listen more. You speak with intention. You choose responses instead of being driven by impulse. People may notice your calmness. They may sense that you are not easily shaken. This calmness is not weakness. It is strength refined by awareness. It is the result of practicing internal discipline consistently, every time you resist overanalyzing. Every time you choose not to chase reassurance, every time you ground yourself instead of spiraling, you are strengthening your mental muscles. Eventually, you reach a point where external behavior still affects you, but it does not control you. You feel emotions, but you are not consumed by them. You experience disappointment, but you do not interpret it as identity failure. You experience loss, but you do not collapse into self-doubt. This is emotional sovereignty. It means you own your inner world. It means you no longer hand over your peace to unpredictable circumstances. It means your happiness is anchored internally. When no one controls your peace, your relationships improve naturally. You stop reacting defensively. You stop escalating minor misunderstandings. You stop projecting insecurity onto others. Instead, you bring stability into interactions. That stability often encourages healthier dynamics. Mastering your mind also means knowing when to step away. If a situation repeatedly disrupts your peace and you have communicated clearly, mental strength includes recognizing when distance is necessary. Protecting your peace is not selfish, it is responsible. There is a quiet dignity in being mentally grounded. You do not need to announce your strength. You demonstrate it through consistency. You do not need constant validation because you validate yourself. You do not need emotional guarantees because you trust your ability to handle uncertainty. The journey to mastering your mind is ongoing, There will be moments where old patterns resurface. There will be days when emotions feel heavier. But each time you return to awareness, you reinforce your independence. Feeling better every day without needing anyone is not about eliminating connection. It is about eliminating emotional captivity. It is about ensuring that your peace is not hostage to other people's unpredictability. When your mind is disciplined, your heart becomes stable. When your heart is stable, your life becomes lighter. And when your life becomes lighter, you realize something profound. The world may move unpredictably, but your inner world remains steady. That steadiness is true freedom. Chapter 10. Waking up free the day you no longer need anyone to feel whole. There comes a quiet morning in your life that feels different from all the others. Nothing dramatic has happened. No one has apologized. No one has suddenly changed. Your circumstances may look exactly the same. But something inside you has shifted. You wake up without the heavy need to check who texted you. You wake up without scanning for reassurance. You wake up without the subtle anxiety of wondering who might leave. You simply wake up and you feel steady. This steadiness is not indifference. It is freedom. For most of your life, your emotional world may have revolved around others more than you realized. You waited for responses to feel secure. You waited for affection to feel valuable. You waited for attention to feel visible. Even when you appeared strong on the outside, there was often a quiet dependency underneath. A dependency on being chosen, a dependency on being approved, a dependency on being needed. But one day, through awareness, discipline, solitude, and mental mastery, you begin to understand something deeply transformative. You realize that your peace was never meant to be outsourced. It was never meant to be placed in someone else's hands. It was always meant to be cultivated within. When you no longer need anyone to feel whole, your entire posture toward life changes. You stop chasing people. You stop proving yourself. You stop adjusting your personality to secure affection. You stop tolerating behavior that disturbs your peace simply because you are afraid of being alone. Instead, you move differently. You move from grounded confidence. Waking up free means you no longer interpret silence as rejection. You no longer interpret distance as proof of your inadequacy. You no longer see someone's change in behavior as a collapse of your worth. You understand that people have their own internal struggles, their own fears, their own limitations. And while their behavior may still affect you emotionally, it no longer defines you. There is a deep calmness that comes from this understanding. You can love someone fully without fearing their departure. You can connect deeply without clinging. You can give without overextending. You can receive without feeling dependent. Your relationships become healthier because they are no longer built on emotional survival. You begin noticing small but powerful changes in your daily life. When someone delays a reply, you do not spiral. When someone disagrees with you, you do not collapse. When someone leaves, you feel sadness, but you do not feel destruction. You trust yourself to endure discomfort. You trust your ability to rebuild. You trust your worth independently of external confirmation. This trust is the foundation of true freedom. Most people search for freedom in external achievements. They think freedom comes from financial success, status, or admiration. But emotional freedom is deeper. It is the ability to remain internally stable even when life moves unpredictably. It is the ability to enjoy connection without being enslaved by it. The Buddha spoke about liberation from attachment, not because relationships are unimportant, but because attachment creates emotional captivity. When you are attached to needing someone for your happiness, you live in subtle fear. Fear of loss, fear of replacement, fear of inadequacy. But when you release that attachment, fear loosens its grip. This does not mean you stop caring. It means you stop depending. Waking up free also changes how you see yourself. You no longer see yourself as someone waiting to be completed. You see yourself as someone already complete. You recognize your strengths. You accept your flaws without harsh judgment. You stop hiding parts of yourself to secure approval. You begin living authentically because your identity is internally anchored. There is immense dignity in this state. You speak honestly without aggression. You set boundaries without guilt. You walk away when necessary without dramatic emotional collapse. You allow others to be who they are while remaining true to yourself. You also experience a deeper relationship with solitude. Being alone no longer feels like abandonment. It feels like space. It feels like clarity. It feels like restoration. You can sit quietly without reaching for distraction. You can spend time by yourself without interpreting it as failure. You become your own companion. This self-companionship is powerful. When you enjoy your own presence, you remove the desperation from your interactions. You no longer enter conversations seeking validation. You enter them seeking connection. You no longer give excessively to secure affection. You give naturally because you want to. Over time, you realize that needing no one does not mean isolating yourself from everyone. It means choosing connection from strength instead of fear. It means participating in relationships without making them your emotional foundation. It means loving freely because you are not afraid of losing yourself. There is also a profound sense of lightness that comes with this transformation. Your mind becomes quieter. Overthinking decreases. Anxiety softens. You stop rehearsing conversations in your head. You stop imagining worst-case scenarios constantly. Your energy becomes calmer because it is not constantly scanning for threats to your identity. This lightness spreads into every area of your life. You make decisions more clearly because they are not clouded by fear of rejection. You pursue goals more confidently because your motivation is internal. You handle setbacks more gracefully because your self-worth is not tied to outcomes. You begin to see life differently. You stop asking, "Who will stay with me?" and start asking, "Am I staying true to myself?" You stop seeking someone to rescue you from loneliness and start building a life that fulfills you independently. This is the day you wake up free. It may not happen all at once. It may happen gradually, through many small moments of awareness. It may happen after heartbreak. It may happen after long periods of solitude. It may happen through disciplined practice, but when it happens, you feel it clearly. You feel grounded. You feel enough. You feel steady. And most importantly, you feel peaceful without needing anyone else to guarantee that peace. From this place, relationships become beautiful rather than burdensome. You no longer cling out of fear. You no longer tolerate mistreatment out of insecurity. You no longer chase attention out of emptiness. You simply show up as yourself. And that is the ultimate transformation. Feeling better every day without needing anyone is not about rejecting love. It is about discovering that love begins within. It is about realizing that your happiness is not hidden in someone else's behavior. It is cultivated in your own mind. When you wake up free, you understand something that once felt impossible. You were never incomplete. You were only conditioned to believe you were. Now you know the truth. Your peace is yours. Your worth is yours. Your happiness is yours. And no one has the power to take it from you unless you hand it over. That is freedom. And conclusion. Perfect. Now we close the entire script with a powerful, emotionally resonant, long-form conclusion that feels complete, grounded, and transformative, aligned with everything you built from chapter 1 to 10. At the beginning of this journey, you may have believed that feeling better every day required someone else to change, someone else to stay, someone else to understand you more deeply. You may have believed that your happiness depended on attention, reassurance, or emotional guarantees. But now you see something clearly. Your peace was never meant to be borrowed. It was never meant to depend on response times, shifting moods, or constant validation. It was never meant to live in someone else's hands. It was always meant to be built within you. Through awareness, you discovered how deeply validation shaped your emotions. Through solitude, you learned to sit with yourself without running. Through discipline, you strengthened your habits. Through mental mastery, you reclaimed control of your inner world. Through wholeness, you stopped searching for someone to complete you. And through inner sufficiency, you stopped asking others to regulate your peace. Now, something has changed inside you. You no longer panic at distance. You no longer collapse at criticism. You no longer chase to feel chosen. You still care. You still connect. You still love. But you no longer depend. There is a quiet power in this state, a calmness that does not need to be proven, a confidence that does not need to be announced, a peace that does not need constant protection. You wake up and feel steady. You move through your day without scanning for reassurance. You experience connection as a gift, not a necessity. And if someone leaves, you grieve, but you remain intact. This is emotional independence. This is inner stability. This is freedom. The world may still be unpredictable. People may still be inconsistent. Circumstances may still shift without warning, but your inner foundation is no longer fragile. It is rooted in awareness, discipline, and self-trust. You have learned that happiness is not found in being chosen by others. It is found in choosing yourself daily. It is found in regulating your emotions consciously. It is found in building habits that strengthen your nervous system. It is found in loving without attachment and caring without clinging. And most importantly, it is found in realizing that you were never incomplete. You were never missing something. You were only taught to look outside for what already lived within you. Now you know better. Now you feel better. And from this point forward, your happiness is not something you chase. It is something you carry.